Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Before we get started on the Netflix taking over Hollywood topic, which is going to be, I'm sure, a lot of fun to go through, I did want to touch on, Steve, the monstrosity that's the Samsung Galaxy Z Trifold. To be fair, it's an interesting technological curiosity, like that it can be done. And I can see you could, on first glance, there's like an attraction to the idea that you could open up something that's supposedly the size of a normal phone into a tablet that's the size of an iPad Pro, effectively. And, it's one more step in the direction of it being the everything device, the one device through all them all. Like, you could imagine, but yeah, see, I'm conflicted because essentially I feel like the standard folding phone, which I'm still not I'm not someone that's gonna rush out and get one at this stage, or ever. I'm still not entirely sure on that. I just feel like the book folding one kind of does that job, and and especially with the Z Fold 7 now, given how thin they got it, that kind of finds the balance in the trade-offs that happen when you do a folding phone like that. Yeah, it's interesting. It can fold twice, although it's called a trifold, which again doesn't make sense. Like, it's 3 screens, but it actually folds twice. So go figure that one out. But that triple sandwich, carrying that around. I'm sure they're going to get it down thinner and all that sort of thing as well. But at some stage, apart from being a curiosity, I just wonder is this going to take off in any great numbers, especially for what will probably be, I don't know, $3,000 or whatever that you have to pay for it.
Well, first of all, I just love the Samsung press release. I just wonder who's got a pocket big enough to fit a deli sandwich. I mean, that's a lot of phone/tablet folded into a nice, tasty piece. Now, I love you. I absolutely love the fold phones, Ben, because I know they're taking us somewhere with them, but let's just agree that I would never buy one.
Yeah, I think I'm with you with that one. It's not launching. Apparently, it's launching in South Korea this month, and not until next year in other markets. So we can revisit it next year to see what the response is, and if I'm sure there'll be some clever people road testing use cases for it.
Well, if I get a handbag for Christmas, then I'll have somewhere to carry it.
Absolutely. All right, so let's move on to our main topic today, and I did want to talk about this Netflix winning the bidding war for Warner Brothers Discovery. A lot of potential implications for this. I couldn't really go past it, only because to me it there's a lot of different thoughts I have on it, but you could see, if you're thinking cynically or pessimistically, that this is like one more step along a chain of events that's I guess, pushing cinema to being streaming overall. The idea that, that a Hollywood studio with the legacy of Warner Brothers being subsumed by Netflix, who have categorically stated that they don't really believe in the theatrical model. They are apparently promising that Warner Brothers is just going to work exactly like it always has. It's just that we're over the top of it now. That HBO Max will be a standalone streaming service independent to Netflix still. That they're going to do all this stuff. But I just wonder, this is the sort of thing, that's what they say at the beginning, but then over time, you can see some consolidation happening. And I just wonder, to be honest, I didn't really think Warner Brothers getting taken over by anyone was a good idea, because it's consolidation. Even if Paramount took it over or Universal took it over or whatever, it still means consolidation, and you'd probably want those big studios to still stay upright, to have that differentiation, different places to take things and whatever. But this seems like a step in the direction of maybe what we know as Hollywood, at least from the 20th century. That was its heyday, I guess, maybe till the mid to late 2000s, and this is one more step towards cinema is now in your home, and that's how it's going to be going forward. I don't know, what do you think about that?
Totally agree with you. Totally agree with you, Ben. I think, once you own everything, well, then it all becomes the same anyway. There are a couple of maybe more interesting, perhaps even lighter angles to look at this from. I think the first is the AOL Time Warner takeover. Is this just the sequel? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Although it will be different this time. I think, you've got a very mature online-based service that's subsuming a traditional service, and I think, as you point out correctly, that's the way things are going. But what I found most interesting, and if maybe this is not so light, in fact, maybe this is quite dark, what I found most interesting is that Netflix don't have the same interest in cinema or exhibition. They're on demand, and that's their, what they would say their core business is. And the reality was the price they paid for Warner was the back catalogue, including, TV shows, etc., etc. It's, it's not a forward-looking takeover. And it just seems to me to be such a zero-sum game for consumers, in that shows that we already watch and consume and have been doing on repeat for a number of years suddenly have incredible value to Netflix because we're going to be watching them until the end of time. Because they're not going to make anything new worth watching.
Well, that's going into one of the reasons that they were talking about, the idea that they may lose content to, like, say, if one of the other bidders had purchased it, that they might lose the right to have these shows on their platform because that other party would block access to it for their own streaming service, and that part of the reason is that. But one of the things that I thought was interesting is that they're potentially going to argue that, and this sort of brings up the antitrust arguments and this sort of thing, that they're actually not, their actual main competitor is YouTube, and not the Hollywood studios, and they need as much content as possible. And in their mind, we're the ones offering the quality content. You go to YouTube for user-generated content, for lack of a better term, and that actually is what the main aim of the game here is to sort of keep with YouTube, and that also conveniently, according to them, we'll see how this works in the courts, obviously, that this isn't an issue of antitrust, because if they have HBO and they have the Netflix services together, for instance, that won't be a problem because they're really competing against YouTube. But that just further reinforces my initial point about the fact that they're basically going to turn, again, they're promising not to do it, but it's a bit hard not to see them essentially deprecating Warner Brothers into not oblivion, but just another, panel that you click on in Netflix. And what's going to happen, it's like the end of a legacy, I guess, in filmmaking.
Oh, exactly. Well, effectively, they're an asset library, because I think whichever way you look at it, don't expect Warner Brothers to produce any decent films in the future, because that's the way Hollywood's going generally anyway. So I'm very, very interested in the idea, though, do we have enough music and do we have enough film to last us forever? in which case then we don't need we don't need to make any more, because these sorts of catalogue plays I find intriguing as to why would you place so much value on a back catalogue because it sells but it can only sell in the absence of any new quality. It's a concept I'm not 100% sure that anyone's actually thought through.
Absolutely. One other thing I did want to mention too is that this isn't like Disney taking over Fox or Marvel or Lucasfilm, because at least Disney's got the traditional, legacy as well of theatrical distribution. So there wasn't any threat there that any of those subsumed companies were going to lose the ability to be able to do those things. Whether they've done that well or not, that's another question, of course. Highly dubious.
Well, the competitor here was Paramount, weren't they, with Netflix? And Paramount's lost out.
Yeah, and so you can imagine that if it went to Paramount, that wouldn't have been as big an issue. Again, I still think it was an issue because of the consolidation component, but at least there was that as far as that's concerned. But then I also wonder if we have a look at some of the other stories that we've come in, is that, Hollywood's having a bit of a rough time, maintaining box office numbers, etc. Yeah, they've had hits per se, but if you go back even 15 years, 20 years, and think about, or even, to be honest, just, at the height of the Marvel era, 6-7 years ago, they're just not punching out the kind of numbers that I'm sure that they would have looked like. And whether or not that's just sort of feeding into, the overall narrative that, maybe traditional cinema theatrical exhibition is a thing that either is going to become very niche or, in the worst case scenario, might go away. I mean, even if you've got like someone like James Cameron saying that he doesn't know if he'll do Avatar 4 and 5 because it may be that the business model doesn't work anymore for a film of that size to do it in the way they were doing it. And he's giving himself an out in case, the studio says, oh, well, we're not going to do anymore. You have to ask the question, I think.
Well, I found his comments really interesting around that, the idea of a franchise versus, what was the term he
saga.
used? A saga. So, and then also you look at what Hollywood's become, which has been the maximum spend on a film to attempt to make the maximum return, which probably at the end of the day only yields, to the investors an 8% or something, double the market rate because of the initial investment, which I find fascinating because, the golden years of Hollywood and what drove this huge franchise, sequel-laden sort of market that we have now, which is dictated not by the market but pushed to the market by the studios themselves, is based on all of those sleepers in the 80s and 90s that, had 5 million budgets and took 100 million at the box office. If you've got a $5 million budget today, not that you might be able to make a short film for starters, and then there's no way at that level investment that they're going to put $200 million worth of global marketing into you. So, they're defeating themselves with their business model, and as a consequence, they're really not making memorable films. I mean, it's great that you can have Fast and Furious 24, but that really means that you don't remember anything between Fast and the Furious 3 and the final number. And we saw that with the Rockies. We saw that with just about everything else they've done, everything even to Alien. And I don't know. What will it take for Hollywood to revise the model? Perhaps they've gone too far now to be able to step back. But I think they've basically playing into the hands of on-demand services such as Netflix. And if we've seen the best content and it's already in a library somewhere, well, then that becomes the play, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, to sarcastically wrap it up, it would seem that maybe they should end up at Netflix in the end, especially if we're enjoying watching content at home rather than going to a cinema to watch it.
Well, if Netflix becomes like Spotify ultimately, I wonder what happens to antitrust then.
Or maybe the content won't even be necessary because it'll all be AI generated anyway.
Well, personalised, an AI agent to make your own films for you at home. Perfect.
Absolutely. All right, Steve, we might wrap it up there. Interesting to think on. Curiously, I am going to go see the new Avatar. I think I already know, I haven't read anything about it, but I think I already know what the entire script is anyway. I think I can have a pretty good guess as to what it's going to be about. But, at least it's a theatrical experience.
Yeah, and it's a saga.
That's right. Absolutely. Alrighty, so that's it for this week's episode. We'll catch you next time.